You're listening to the Spark Radio Network. Radio like you've never heard before. Innovation, creativity, and imagination are all said to begin with a spark. So fasten your seatbelt and take the ride of your life and listen for the spark.
In these uncertain economic times, you've got to do whatever you can to save money. One of our biggest expenses can be our cars, especially when unexpected repair bills hit. Not anymore. If you own a vehicle with less than 130,000 miles, is less than 12 years old, has a warranty about to expire, or even no warranty at all, you could stop paying for car repairs. Roadside assistance, towing, and rental coverage are all included. Don't wait for the next repair. Make one free call right now to see if you qualify. If your vehicle is less than 12 years old, has less than 130,000 miles, even if it's out of warranty, paying for car repairs can become a thing of the past. Call us right now and get your car protected before your next repair bill hits. Get protection and no more repair bills. Call 800-696-1030. Again, 800-696-1030. That's 800-696-1030. 800-696-1030.
Joe had huge problems with the IRS.
I knew it was coming. I hadn't filed taxes since 1990.
All the IRS letters coming in added up to a nightmare.
It got up to like $68,000. My heart started beating fast. It's like, there's no way, man. I mean, I ain't going to be able to do this.
Then they stopped his paycheck.
So that's when I started making phone calls and found U.S. Tax Shield.
U.S. Tax Shield went to work immediately.
They just took the bull by the horns. What blew my mind is he called the IRS right then and there.
So why is U.S. Tax Shield A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau? Joe knows.
They saved me a ridiculous amount of money.
If you owe more than $10,000 to the IRS or state, choose the company Joe chose, U.S. Tax Shield.
It was the best decision I made. U.S. Tax Shield is the way to go. Life is good. Thank you, Lord.
Call 800-471-3287.
U.S. Tax Shield. Boo-rah. Yes.
800-471-3287. 800-471-3287.
The Internet will never be the same. You're listening to K98Talk.com.
Whoa! Good God, y'all. What is it good for? Absolutely. Let's get started again.
All writers are prone to becoming so attached to our characters and stories that we struggle to see why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing to full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, shaping stories into masterpieces that can stand the test of time. Editing services are provided for all genres and all age categories. Services range from critiques of the short story through to line edits of the full-length novel and copy editing for those preparing for publication. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your websites, as well as help with those book blurbs and promotional material. We won't abandon you to the masses. We want to celebrate with you in your successes. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services and prices, visit us at blackwolfeditorial.com.
We will never fully understand what we've asked of our military service members or their families, asking them to put themselves in harm's way, to endure it all. But we do understand that it's our turn, our duty, to keep them secure for the rest of their lives. Wounded Warrior Project long-term support programs help our most severely ill or injured veterans live independently, at no cost, for life, so that they might stand at ease. Join us at findwwp.org.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same.
I'm not ready to end the fight. I'm not ready to back down. 'Cause 'Cause I've been through hell and I don't have time to go round and round and round. It's too late to turn back now. You know I wouldn't if I could. 'Cause I'm proud as hell, I can't bring myself to do what it is you think I should.
All right, folks. Well, it's Tuesday evening. This is the Jen and Rick Show. I am Rick. She is Jen, and I'm back with her after a week off and a break from radio, which honestly in radio years feels like I've been gone for 6 months. So how have you been for the last week?
I've been pretty good. It's been pretty busy around here, but all is well.
All right, so I know you guys probably did this a little bit on Thursday. I actually caught some of the show after the fact, but since I didn't really get a chance to hear too much about it, I figured I'd give you a chance to kind of recap what because I know that you spent a lot of last week at the Texas convention. So thought we'd maybe backtrack for a little bit, talk about anything that stood out there for you over those last couple of days, since you and I didn't really talk much while I was on vacation.
Right. So I guess. And I wrote a piece about this that you can find on that Misfit Politics site I write on. But I was just really impressed. There was not a whole lot of Trump fervor. There was some, but not an overwhelming amount. What I really came away from it with is that there are just still so many very active, patriotic, conservative people willing to stand on values and principles. Several of the districts I was able to witness chose not to send delegates to Trump or give delegates to Trump. They still, there was an opportunity to say, what are we sending to the national convention, and different districts deliberated, and they all have all sorts of different rules. But even pretty liberal Travis County out of Austin, which has sometimes even more moderate Republicans. I know it's mostly Democrats here, but there's a good conservative voice, but there's a lot of moderates too. Decided to go 2-1 on that. So Cruz 2, Trump 1, which was, and people being very enthusiastic about that. And I know everyone could say, oh, well, it's Cruz's home state, so to be expected. But that wasn't really the feel. I mean, Cruz had already been out of the nomination, had already dropped out of the process for several weeks by that point. And it didn't feel like, oh, because he's our Texas guy. I mean, it felt like because he's the closest and we don't want Trump. Because he's the last damn conservative anywhere near this race. Right. And I just overheard some conversations. I was able to go to some of the general session stuff. I was able to sit in on a few of the meetings. I got to go to a couple sessions, and that one I had been to that Thursday when we talked was that social media session. The exhibition hall was really fun to walk around, all sorts of booths, from advocating homeschooling to, different pro-life organizations, different people running for office, and then just companies that were promoting their brand because they're 100% American made, hire Americans, that they were there kind of representing their brands and very pro, I guess, pro-America. It was really pretty cool. I got a shirt that had the silhouette of the bust of George Washington's, the bust that you see him from his profile, and it says the original American Idol on it. So I'm a huge nerd, but I'm super excited about that. But there's just a lot of neat stuff. You do a political talk show. You're already a nerd. Well, yeah, I mean, but I'm especially a founders and constitutional nerd. I'm such a dork about all that stuff. But the Ted Cruz booth was really cool. His dad came and stood there once every day and shook hands and talked to people. I heard Heidi was over there at one point. I didn't get to see that. And what they did was, because obviously they already had the space for the convention before they knew he would be leaving the race, they turned it into a thank you, Ted booth. And so you got to go by and write a note to like him and Heidi and just, write on it whatever you wanted to say. And then they had all these little paper clips and these lines, these like clotheslines strung up, and you like clipped them along. And there were just, thousands of them. So that was really cool. But the highlight, of course, was some of the main speakers at the end of it all, which the big one being Ted Cruz. And I was pretty blown away. So my reaction to him was super unexpected to me because like you, even though I'm Texan and I've always been I've always really supported him, and I've found just a lot of his values and principles to be so great. I love the way that he's fought for our Constitution. I think he's done great things in Texas. I like how he kind of latched on to this grassroots thing, and he kind of didn't have a chance in his initial run and ended up becoming a senator based on really hitting the hardcore conservative values. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. But as far as being president goes, he wasn't my first choice, certainly not this year. But he's always kind of annoyed me with his, like everybody talks about, his kind of like preacher lecture style. It just is a little too slick, a little too rehearsed. So I was excited to see him talk, of course, but I didn't have just a whole lot of expectations about how I would feel about it. I was stunned. The room was so electrified. The energy in there was off the charts. And mind you, it was the last day of the convention, and a lot of people had trickled out by this point. It was a long weekend. It started on Thursday morning. So it's not like this had just started Friday and people left on Saturday. It started on Thursday morning. So they guessed that there were, out of about the 11,000 in attendance, about 8,000 were still there. Some precincts or some districts missed it altogether because they were still in deliberation 8 hours after their caucuses started for some of the final things that were sent to the main floor for vote. So they even missed the whole thing and delayed the convention by like an hour and a half, which was kind of funny. But Heidi introduced him. Heidi is so well spoken. She is just like the epitome of grace. She's really engaging. And of course, she's talking about a passionate subject, her husband, who she loves and adores. So that was pretty easy. But she said some really neat things. She talked about how this isn't that the government may operate in 4-year segments, but God does not. And they will continue to serve God, not any man or any government. Of course, they will serve the American people as such his job requires and for what his heart wants to do. But as far as being actual servants, he's a servant of the Lord, and that they will continue to be vessels of God no matter what happens with this government. I thought that was pretty powerful, and it seemed really passionate. She got kind of emotional a couple times, just thanking the people of Texas and Americans in general for how far they'd gone in the entire campaign, and how it, really kind of all started with the grassroots Texas from way, way, way back when he decided to run for a national office. So then he comes out, and it was like a rock star entered the building. And the way he spoke just did not come off to me. And maybe it's because, and some of it was, just kind of same old, same kind of lines that you're going to hear over and over and over. But it just didn't come off in that preacher manner to me. And I don't know if that's maybe a disconnect with live versus screen, or if it was actually different, or what that difference was. But that way at all. In fact, it was exciting. He was engaging. It was really kind of inspiring to listen to. So I thought I really enjoyed it, and I got goosebumps. And it was just really cool. And people obviously there overwhelmingly supported him. So there was a whole lot of cheering, a whole lot of dead time because he couldn't get a word in because everyone was screaming. So that kind of wraps it all up. There's I'm sure some details I've left out, but that was pretty much it. I just walked away being surprised about how I felt about hearing him speak, and really proud of the entire process. I was fascinated by the entire weekend.
Well, I'm glad you had a good time, and of course, I don't know. For me, it's always a little different when you hear a candidate speak live versus when you hear them on TV, because it's kind of a new experience for me because I've never really done things like this until the last few years, and we've just now started getting big enough where we can actually pull credentials for places. So it always seems like it's a lot different when you're actually hearing them live, and maybe that was part of it. And I think, honestly, a lot of it is, to me, Cruz never really came off as flat as the media portrayed him. But I think part of it is because I've known people like him, and I am a little bit like him. I mean, I don't have a complete audiographic recall, but anything that I see or hear, I can usually remember at least 95 to 96% of it. And a lot of times when you're trying to access that stuff, you don't realize it, but you kind of start dropping into this monotone when you're trying to start reciting things, and everybody thinks it's because you've written this speech and you're going off a teleprompter or whatever. But he literally can remember pretty much everything that he ever hears. And it's why, if you notice, in that one debate, when he called the media out for the way they were treating everybody, he basically went in order. And he said, you said this about this person, this about this person, this about this person, you asked this person, this person, this. He actually did it in the exact order that the media asked the questions. And it was one of the first times that I remembered something that I'd read about him a while ago, and that is basically that he can remember everything that he ever hears. And he actually has commanded that pretty well. But it's one of the reasons why I think he falls flat a lot of times, because when he starts remembering the things that he hears, sometimes he sounds flat.
But you know what? I find it interesting that the media said all of that about Cruz, because to me, there wasn't much different. I didn't really think that he fell flat so much as that it felt kind of like a lecture. And it's funny, they just fawned over Barack Obama and his oratory skills and the way in which and he had an element, and he still does, of that kind of lecture-y thing that he does that is very similar to what some of Cruz does. Now, I realize there are other aspects of Obama's, speaking presence that then kind of jazz some stuff up sometimes, and, he's charismatic and whatever, but a lot of his style is very like, I'm the professor, you're the student, and that was just revered. But Cruz, that was a mark against him. You know what I mean?
Well, let's be fair. Barack Obama can only be charismatic when the teleprompter tells him to do so.
Well, that is very true, which is funny because it's kind of the opposite for George Bush. W is very charismatic when there's no script and no teleprompter, but then like really kind of blah when there is one.
Yeah, it's just differences. I mean, the older generation never really had access to things like teleprompters, at least not the way they do now, so they weren't used to using them. They had note cards, and that was pretty much what they had.
Yeah. True.
All right, so I know we had talked about a couple of different stories. I think we're going to save the Austin Peterson stuff till after the break, because we're already over for almost 20 minutes in. One of the stories that kind of stuck out to me, well, of course, other than, we could spend the rest of the show bashing Trump and probably still have plenty of material. But one of the things that I had found kind of interesting was that apparently Mr. de Blasio is actually finding himself in some rather hot water and possibly may not get elected for a second term as the vaunted mayor of New York City. Actually, according to the Wall Street Journal, his approval ratings have plunged, actually. And it basically says Mayor Bill de Blasio's approval ratings fell to 41% in the Quinnipiac University poll released Tuesday, and a majority of voters who responded to the survey said he didn't deserve re-election next year. In January, the Quinnipiac poll showed Mr. de Blasio with a 50% approval rating for the job he was doing as mayor. Mr. de Blasio, a liberal Democrat, now confronts a greater electoral headwinds as he faces federal and state investigations into his administration and his political fundraising. Gee, a Democratic mayor who's in trouble.
Shocked, I tell ya.
But yeah, I mean,
There's so many.
I don't know. I guess the biggest thing for de Blasio for me, what caught my attention with him was his son, and him basically telling the world that he told his son that he had to be careful how he dealt with the police. As the mayor, the last thing you should ever have to tell your son is be careful how you deal with the police, because, come on, let's face it, the police aren't going to do anything to your son. You're the mayor.
Right. It really kind of silly. I thought it was interesting. First of all, I'm shocked that he's still in the 40th percentile approval ratings range. That really kind of, because there are a lot of Democrats that are unhappy with him too. So I found that really, I was like, whoa, what? I was expecting it to be like, oh, he drops into the 20. Oh no, he dropped into the 40s. Wow. They get a lot of leeway. I mean, liberals really give their guys a lot of leeway. Kind of course crazy.
They do. Look what's
I thought it was
Trump.
Interesting that the assistant director for the poll said, and I quote, "Black voters are the only group keeping Mr. de Blasio afloat." End quote.
Well, gee, I wonder why.
I
he's only been pandering to them since day one.
But it was just really kind of like a very blunt and normally not what someone would actually be willing to say, no matter how true it is. I also thought it was interesting that like the major progress that his spokeswoman cited for him was expanding universal pre-K and expanding affordable housing. But I was reading something the other day, and I don't remember who carried it. I could look it up, but that actually the numbers for affordable housing have gone down under him despite expanding some of the programs. So not sure that that's a check mark in his book. So he's got pre-K. He expanded pre-K. Good for him.
Yeah, expanded pre-K. Way to go. That's the real hallmark of a great mayor there. I guess it could be worse. At least he didn't go Bloomberg and start trying to tell people they couldn't supersize their drinks.
Well, yeah, I mean, it could be worse. Still an overreach of, government. All of it is. But that's New York for you.
Well, yeah. I mean, but government overreach is pretty much running rampant everywhere at this point. It's actually one of the reasons I think that things have gotten as bad as they have been with this particular election cycle specifically, because it seems like everybody that's a front runner wants more government.
100%. I mean, once Cruz was gone, and even Kasich, I can't stand Mr. Fruit Ninja, but he wanted. I mean, he still wants government, but not to the extent that Trump or Clinton do, or Sanders, of course, most of all. But yeah, that there is no limited option here. Not even like a facade of limited government is an option with any of these candidates.
Speaking of Kasich, I have what was probably running through his mind most of the time when he was on the debate stage.
I hate this place. Nothing works here. The medications don't work. I've been here for 7 years.
Just saying.
I love that one.
Okay, so yeah, Bill de Blasio in trouble in New York. No major surprise there. Although I wonder how many of those people that are holding him up also crossed over to vote for Trump. Or wait, no, they can't. It's a closed primary there. Never mind. I forgot about that because even his children didn't change their registration in time to vote for him, and yet we still want to make the guy president. When your children don't even take the time to make sure they can vote for you, that should tell you something, America. I'm just saying.
Very true.
A bit of an aside, but I had an interesting, very long, drawn-out conversation on Twitter on Saturday with some people that shall remain nameless. But one of the things that kept being thrown into my face over and over and over again is the fact that apparently I worship the Constitution because I would rather the country follow a 200-some-odd-year-old moldy document than make actual changes. That wasn't a liberal conversation, folks. That was from folks that were claiming to be conservatives.
Okay, I have heard this more and more recently, or at least I've witnessed it. I haven't exactly been, I don't think I've been in that conversation myself, but I have seen it time and time again, and it makes my jaw just drop to the floor. I mean, what? What are we even you don't even get to say that you're moderate if you believe that it's a moldy old piece of paper that needs to just be forgotten in order to get change. Like I don't even know if you get to say you're American. What? That's ridiculous.
That's right. From now on, if you say that the Constitution is an old moldy piece of paper, we are pulling your America card. You just can't have it. I'm just saying.
I mean, it is the foundation of everything here. I don't. So many feels and words and things that I can't say. That blows my mind. Blows my mind. And these people are like, I'm more conservative than you. And I'm like, oh, okay. Wait, what?
I made that argument with somebody, that the Constitution was basically the founding document that told our government what they can and can't do and outlined our protections against the government, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. They're like, you obviously don't know history because the founding document for our country was actually the Articles of Confederation. I'm like, really? Really?
These people, and they're like lame attempts at using historical justifications for their wayward views. Just wear me out.
I mean, you're as much of a history buff as I am, so I wanted to bring that up on purpose because I really, for a second, was like, is this guy serious? And I was like, well, and then I went back and I looked, and I'm like, well, I know that document technically came first, but, when the Constitution came along...
But, you realize that they didn't go with that document for a very good reason?
Yeah, I know. But that was one reason.
It's not our founding document that we base everything in our government on because they didn't think it was adequate for building this republic. Get real.
Oh, don't remind them that it's a republic. They'll get cranky again.
Oh, I know.
Because it should be a democracy, Rick.
Definitions are so hard.
With today's technology, we should be able to vote with our phones, and it should be all tabulated, and whoever gets the most votes should win, and that should be it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it doesn't occur to them. These are the same people that throw stompy fits over who people vote for on American Idol, and they're like, they're not even good, or he has stupid hair, but they want us to vote for president that way. I mean, come on.
Well, again, just as a reminder, our side now sounds exactly like the Gore folks in 2000. Because remember how mad they were that Gore won the actual popular vote, but George Bush actually won the electoral vote? Remember how angry they were, and how even back then...
Oh, and we had to explain...
Oh, yeah.
To explain to them what all that meant, and they didn't care.
And, well, now we have to explain it to our side. They don't care either.
Well, oh, absolutely. But you know what? Actually, I'm going to take offense to one thing you said there. They are not on our side. Maybe some of the people that are, voting Trump or are now supporting Trump because they support the GOP or they feel like they need to in order to not have Hillary be elected because they feel that's strongly against Hillary. But the rest of them, screw them. They're not on our side. I don't think they ever were. They're populist, kind of fanfare, wannabe participants in this system that I'm not sure really always were. Just my too harsh sense.
And I completely agree with that statement, and you actually reminded me of something that I was going to say, and I kind of forgot. I think a lot of these folks that up until a few months ago, even you and I on Twitter were kind of fighting arm in arm with, that came in with the Tea Party and everything else, I think a lot of them were an enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of movement, where we were kind of looking at them going, hey, there's certain things that we don't agree on, but there's other things that we do agree on, so we should focus on those things. And we did. And now all of a sudden we have let all these people into the GOP that really don't give a damn about the GOP or the Constitution or the Bill of Rights, or much of anything else as long as they get their way. And they have led to Trump. Just let that sink in for a second.
Yeah. I think you're right. I just don't know. And I actually had a conversation with someone the other day, a family member, that basically was like, oh, and more people coming out to vote, yada, yada, yada. And I'm like, you realize that it's not always a good thing when more people are voting, because they tend to be uninformed.
Well, the sad thing about that is not even a true statement.
Like angry, never before voters, especially like in primaries and stuff, for us is equivalent to like how dictators have been elected in many other places. So I don't really count that as the most positive thing, but that's just me.
Well, it's not even really that. All of these places that are talking about all these great numbers, if you really look at the numbers, they're not that great.
Okay, that's what I've been reading about recently. I've been seeing several different breakdowns. I think that even Jake Tapper did one maybe last week. I don't remember quite, but that some of these numbers actually, it's not really the case. There's higher numbers as far as primaries go, participation in Republican primaries, but that most of the people that are voting in the primaries are still typical general election voters. So they always vote in the general. They maybe don't always vote in primaries. They came out and voted in primaries this year. So they're not exactly new voters. They're just new primary voters. So that it does have an effect on this election, but it's not exactly the same thing as like, oh, he's bringing out all these people that have never been interested ever before. They still would have voted in the general, even if we would have elected like Big Bird. So whatever. It's really not an accomplishment.
Yeah, I mean, and overall, it's really not. And I think, the thing to keep in mind, and I guess this is one of the things that's driving me crazy, and it's one of the reasons why for the last part of the show, we're actually going to change gears, and instead of bashing Trump and Hillary, which are always fun times, so we'll get back to that too. I'm going to start, at least as much as I can, focusing on somebody that I actually feel like I can support. And I'm going to be upfront. I don't support everything that he stands for, but I think when we're looking at the fact that right now we have the choice of two complete and total pathological liar egomaniacs, and we get to pick which one of those gets the nuclear launch codes, I think it's time for a third choice. And I've been frantically looking for one. And the thing that keeps being shoved down my throat sideways is how the third party vote can never amount to anything because we have to fall in line behind one or the other. If you look at the numbers, 60% of our current population does not like either candidate. If this isn't the time that we could actually finally say, okay, enough is enough, let's do something different instead of continuing to repeat the same cycles and hoping for different results, because that's what this is getting into, folks, and it's what's driving me nuts. Politics has become a brand war. It doesn't matter if you pay for the blue soda or the red soda, you're still getting soda. It doesn't matter if you vote for or you pull the blue lever or the red lever, because you're either going to get a crap sandwich or a crap burrito. Either way, you're still getting crap. And in this election cycle, it's not any more possible that they could make it any more apparent that we really do not have any choices anymore. And they don't want us to have choices. And it's one of the most frustrating things that I think I have ever seen happen in my lifetime, because we have all of these dutiful people that will pick up their banner and march off to war over their candidate of choice, not realizing that really when it comes down to it in this cycle, there's absolutely no difference between the two of them.
Yeah, everything you just said.
Sorry, I've been having one of those weeks. So.
No, I'm like, you done. You just nailed it.
All right,
don't
folks.
Have much to add.
Well, on that note, since JR's speechless for the moment, we're going to go ahead and take a quick break, pay some bills. We will be right back. You are listening to the Jenn and Rick Show. When we come back, I actually have some clips from Austin Peterson, one of the only pro-life libertarian candidates I've been able to find. I have to admit, I've heard some things from him that I don't 100% agree with, but you're never going to 100% agree with any candidate, and at least this guy doesn't sound crazy. So we'll give him a listen when we come back.
Cause I'm proud as hell, I can't bring myself to do what it think I should.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it, there to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
The staff of K98 Talk and the Spark Radio Network is proud to announce that our very own Rowdy Rick Robinson has been selected as one of the top conservative talk show hosts in the nation for his program America Off the Rail. Again, congratulations to Rowdy Rick Robinson for a job well done and another reason to stay connected to K98 Talk and the Spark Radio Network.
Think fast. In the short time it takes to listen to this message, a small flame can turn into a big fire. Several minutes more, and thick, poisonous smoke may have filled your lungs and reduced your ability to respond. Give it 5, and your entire home may be filled with flames.
Keep breathing. We've got you.
Don't let your world go up in smoke. Have working smoke alarms and always stay in the kitchen when cooking at high temperatures. Learn more at usfa.fema.gov because fire is everyone's fight.
If you want to work until you keel over, have less of everything in retirement, or give back more of your hard-earned money to the stock market again, then just ignore me. But if you'd like to protect the money you save, receive a steady, predictable retirement income, and enjoy financial security for as long as you live, then listen to this. You can download a free report that reveals the wealth-building secrets Wall Street and the banks don't want you to know. You'll learn how you can get guaranteed growth, safety, and real prosperity without risking your money in the Wall Street casino, and how to get the money you need when you need it, simply by asking for it. This is the best way to have a 100% secure retirement, and know your money will last as long as you do. To learn more about this method, and to get your free report, go to 29security.com. That's the number 29security.com. 29security.com. Go to 29security.com.
Think fast. In the short time it takes to listen to this message, a small flame can turn into a big fire. Several minutes more, and thick, poisonous smoke may have filled your lungs and reduced your ability to respond. Give it 5, and your entire home may be filled with flames.
Keep breathing. We've got you.
Don't let your world go up in smoke. Have working smoke alarms and always stay in the kitchen when cooking at high temperatures. Learn more at usfa.fema.gov because fire is everyone's fight.
It's too late to turn back now. You know I wouldn't if I could. Cause I'm proud as hell. I can't bring myself to do what it is you think I should.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Jenn and Rick Show. We are live. Actually, before we get into the third party and what it means and one of the candidates that I think we could honestly support, because... I mean, come on, the libertarians, a lot of them are a little crazy. Some of them are pretty close to anarchists, but this guy is not one of them. And I don't honestly know if I will remain a libertarian or not. What I can tell you is at this point, I feel like the GOP is no longer somewhere that I fit. So one way or another, there will be another party soon. I don't care if I have to start helping people build one, because much like Kasich, this is now how I feel about the GOP.
I hate this place. Nothing works here.
Just saying. All right, so before we went to break, we're actually going to talk about Austin Peterson, but I forgot that we actually had done some prep work, and we were going to talk about the recent VA Secretary snafu. I have about a 30-second clip of listening to him trying to see how far down his throat he can jam his foot.
The days to an appointment is really not what we should be measuring. What we should be measuring is the veteran's satisfaction. I mean, what really counts is how does the veteran feel about their encounter with the VA. When you go to Disney, do they measure the number of hours you wait in line, or the number, what's important? What's important is what's your satisfaction with the experience. And what I would like to move to eventually is that kind of measure.
Okay, so I have a question. Can we pull the dead soldiers and ask them what their satisfaction rate is for the VA?
That is funny that you just said that, because while that clip was playing, I just made a note that said, how can they be satisfied if they are dead?
I mean, dude, you are comparing the VA to frickin' Disney World. I don't know of anybody that died waiting in line for Space Mountain.
Well, exactly. And by the way, I will jump around and wave my arms wildly, call on me, call on me. I just went to Disney in November with a 2-year-old. I went to Disney World in Florida, and let me tell you, Disney does everything they possibly can. They're renovating rides, the kids' rides. They are completely renovating. Dumbo now has an inside wait area. So you walk through and you come up to a hostess stand, you get a pager, and on the inside where there used to be a bunch of stanchions and snaked lines, they've built a playground. And there's a toddler area, and then there's a 3-year-old to 10-year-old area. And you get your pager, you go, your kid plays, there's benches to sit on, there's bathrooms and water fountains and whatever, and you wait and your buzzer goes off, and then you go and you walk right onto the ride. Even on the other rides, we didn't do a ton because my kid was young, and so we did, just a few rides in an afternoon. But that wasn't because of the lines. And they do everything they can to make them enjoyable. Their employees are every I don't even know, 20 feet maybe. And they're entertaining and telling jokes and blowing balloons. And then you get asked constantly how your time is and how long you had to wait. And they're monitoring it on a regular basis. They do care. And in fact, I would say at this point, they care a whole hell of a lot more than the VA cares about their actual soldiers and veterans and sick people waiting just to see a doctor to even be diagnosed, much less get treatment, which then they're put on another list that they have to wait for who knows how long. It's absolutely insulting. How dare he even try to compare?
I mean, it boggles the mind. I mean, literally, when you think about not only how bad things have gotten with the VA, but remember that when Obamacare was first being talked about, and even years before that, when the conservative movement would poo-poo the idea of government-funded health care, the Democratic Party would always point at the VA and say, look how well we do with the VA. Imagine what we could do for the rest of America. What we didn't realize is it was all a shell game. They had separate books, separate files, separate waiting lists. They didn't even keep track of the number of people that died while they were waiting for treatment. And now the guy has the gall to say, well, you don't really worry about how long you're waiting in line when you're sitting at that there Disney World, now do you? Dude, people go to Disney World to have fun. They pay money to go there. Right. So Disney World is going to pay attention to all of that and fix it, because if they don't, you lose money.
Even at the same time, though, they're but people are willing to wait a certain amount because they are wanting the attraction. They are wanting to be there for this certain popular ride or whatever. So they are going to be a little bit patient. They're not waiting to get chemotherapy or an x-ray on their broken ankle. They're waiting for a show, and it kind of builds some anticipation. They're not going to be patient forever, but that is just ridiculous to compare it to medical care versus entertainment.
Okay. I mean, yeah, completely. I mean, and that's kind of the whole point of the segment, was just how brain dead can you be? While we are on the subject of veterans, though, I had Jess pop into the chat and remind me of something. Yes. This coming weekend, we will be doing a Memorial Day special. I think she's going to try to do it through as much of the weekend as possible and through most of the day Memorial Day till we actually go back into live programming. So if you are a veteran or you know anyone who is a veteran and you want to share the story, make sure you reach out to her at jessspov@k98talk.org. You can share stories with her there. I'm sure if you want to actually give a statement of some kind, she can arrange a way for you to do that as well. Or if you want to just write it out, you're welcome to do that. But this is the first time we've tried to do anything like this, so let's try to make this the biggest deal possible that we can for our veterans, because Lord knows this administration has been treating them like redheaded stepchildren now for a while. So let's show them that not everybody else feels that way.
Awesome. Well, I was going to say one last thing.
Sure.
So Disney did come back and basically, kind of punched him in the gut, punched McDonald in the gut. They really came back strong, and I said, good for them, because that was not only ridiculous, but then they went on to say this. They said, what the secretary said was factually untrue. We take wait times very seriously. We continually push the boundaries to give our guests the best possible experience. Then, and yada, 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 they go on to explain how that, what that all entails. But then they did make sure to say this company was founded by veterans. Roy Disney was an officer in the U.S. Navy, and Walt drove an ambulance in France assisting service members directly after World War I. I thought it was very smart of their PR firm to tie it back into veterans and not just be like, we take pride in our wait times and yada, yada, and that wasn't fair to us, but also be like, and that's crap because we were founded by veterans and we support veterans. I think sometimes stuff like this flies by and companies don't respond and they don't want to deal with it. And so I thought it was a nice little 1-2 punch that not only were they responding and saying, hey, that's not true, but then also, and we are deeply, related to, the veteran cause. So that was interesting.
All right. So for the last part of the show, we're going to change gears a little bit, and we're actually going to try to take a more positive tack instead of just continually lashing out against the Trump and the Hillary camps, because Lord knows I've been doing a lot of that lately. Hey, but, they're easy targets, but at the same time, there is another option, and what the scary part is, if you listen to everybody, they seem to think there is no other option. And like I said a moment ago, this is the first time in history that if you look at the numbers, first time that I can remember in recent history anyway, 60% of the population doesn't want either of the front runners, and yet we have another party that nobody ever really talks about, the Libertarian Party. And the interesting thing about that party is they basically are a blending of conservative and liberal principles. There are a lot of things socially that they're like, yeah, maybe we shouldn't worry about that stuff so much, but at the same time, we should be a lot more fiscally responsible and focused on things like the Constitution and freedom and things like that. So I actually have some clips that I found from Austin Peterson, who is one of the libertarians running for president. He is not the front runner. Unfortunately, Gary Johnson is. I'm not that much of a Johnson fan, but if it comes down to it, though, I still think I'm probably voting for him only because I can't vote for the other two at all. But I'm really going to try to do everything I can to try to see if maybe we can get to the point where Peterson is at least a contender. And one of the reasons why is because of this right here. This is actually his stance on why he is a libertarian and is pro-life, which is not something that you hear every day.
Well, I think that there's always a knee-jerk reaction to anything government would do to be involved in people's personal lives. I think there's just an inherent terror that libertarians have when it comes to what government might do to legislate to stop abortions. Because, of course, you have Venezuela, where you have a tyrannical government and abortions, one size fits all, completely banned. So I think from speaking from their side of things, that's what they're worried about. But for me, I'm trying to create the most ethical, virtuous philosophy that I can. And Ron Paul really changed my mind on this one, because he described the abortion procedure and how there was a still crying baby thrown into a dumpster. You cannot support that as a libertarian. You must be pro-life, I believe, because at a minimum, the duty of government, if it is to exist, should be limited strictly to protecting life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You cannot have liberty without life. And so I've really come around on this. And I've adopted what we call the consistent pro-life ethic, which is a Catholic doctrine. I'm not not Catholic, but I find a lot of solace in this teaching. It does get me in trouble with conservatives, though, because they'll say, hey, we love that you're pro-life with babies, but then, of course, I say that I'm also against the death penalty because the government is not perfect, and if the government makes mistakes, you should not be able to make a mistake when it comes to the death penalty either. So then the conservatives were like, well, hey, we don't like that. But I'm going to try and be as consistent as I can and try and adopt the most morally positive, virtuous ethic that I can, and I think that means being pro-life, and I'll advocate for that.
So there you have him in his own words telling you why it was that he became pro-life, because as a libertarian he didn't start out that way. And one of the things that swayed him was the same thing that we have been saying needs to happen for years, and that people need to understand that this is not just a clump of cells, but we're not allowed to tell people that because it might hurt their feelings.
Well, this is one of my biggest issues with the big L libertarians. Is their kind of lackadaisical stance on life. They're very apt to be anti-death penalty, but very hesitant to be pro-life in terms of abortion. So when I kind of started looking into Austin Peterson, I was very surprised and also very glad to find him and how he's evolved on this. And there's been some people that have called him out and said, well, he's not quite as pro-life as he portrays himself to be. Like, he puts it in his bio and yada, yada, yada. I dug into that a little bit more, and I've seen what they're talking about. They don't like that he's still, and I guess some of the more super conservative don't like that he's still basically is like, we shouldn't have a federal mandate outlawing abortion. He's not for that. But again, he's a libertarian, so he's not wanting a federal mandate for basically anything ever. So that's not surprising. And for me, that's not necessarily like a huge knock against him. He did say, however, that at one point that if it were up to the states and went through the courts and Roe v. Wade was overturned, then fine. But no executive action or no federal mandate of that sort. And so I don't think that makes him not pro-life by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, it also makes it practical, because even as someone that is staunchly pro-life, and I think abortion is wrong on every single level for almost every single thing other than life of the mother. And even then, sometimes I'm hesitant because I think it should be left up to the mother. Because it's their choice as to whether they're going to sacrifice their self to bring their child into the world or not.
My body, my choice? Get out!
Well, yeah, but I mean, at the same time, though, the whole concept of that is that Roe v. Wade is probably never actually going to go away. At this point, it's almost impossible to put the genie back in the bottle. And even if they did, all it would do was lead back to what led to Roe v. Wade in the first place, which is really dark, smelly alleys where people are using coat hangers to do it anyway. I think for most of us that are really involved in the pro-life movement, what we're really looking for is, one, educate people as to the alternatives, and two, bring it back to the point where it is safe, legal, and rare, which is the actual definition of Roe v. Wade, because at this point it is most assuredly and most definitely not rare.
No, it's more of on demand, which candidates like Hillary Clinton would like us to pay for, and possibly way past 20 weeks. I really do support the state's endeavors to limit what they will allow for abortion, just like taxes or anything else. If you don't like some of the state's rules, then you can move elsewhere. I know some people go, but it should be within the state's rights, and they should be allowed to make certain provisions, like down in Texas, where there were things like ambulatory services and whatnot, which, by the way, I thought was interesting that the pro-aborts fought this so much. And I do use that way. I don't say pro-choice, they're pro-aborts, because the people that are activists on that side of things are not pro-choice. They are pro-abortion. Abortion, make no mistake about it. They would be totally fine with more babies killed every day. I think, I've had a lot of work done in my mouth for various reasons. I have genetically terrible teeth and gums and whatnot. And I've had to have several things done that required me to be sedated. My periodontist, my oral surgeon, all of them had to have ambulatory services present on site and admitting privileges to a hospital in case anything goes wrong. But an abortionist does not have to? That's absurd. Like, getting my wisdom teeth pulled requires me to go to a doctor that meets these certain requirements, but actually having the abortion procedure, which is a surgery and can have major complications, does not require that. But this is the thing that the liberals fight against, and they think that that restricts it, that makes all of the, gosh, we could turn this into an entire show, but basically, I think allowing the states to decide what they want to decide within certain realms about that is what he definitely supports, what Peterson has said he supports, and is much more of a joint view of conservatives and libertarians alike. Indrant.
All right, so we're probably going to run a couple minutes long if that's okay, but I have one other segment that I wanted to play, and I have to say this is one of the things that I've heard him say that I'm not so sure on. But I wanted to basically give everybody the full picture. This is Austin Peterson on immigration, borders, and the like, and you'll find it's much different than Donald Trump, and I'm not exactly sure where I stand on what he says.
Because a free market in labor is just as effective as a free market in commodities. The idea is that what role does the government have to get involved between an employer and an employee? What I'm trying to do is to try and avoid the government stepping in and saying, you can't hire this person, you can't hire that person, because I would like a free market in labor. Now, I realize that some of these positions obviously are not going to happen in my lifetime, but what I would like to talk about is why I think Milton Friedman was right in many ways, because he favored illegal immigration. Why? Because in the 80s, at least, you could come here and you would not qualify for immigration benefits. That's changed. And you cannot have open borders in a welfare state. But the welfare state is the problem, not the immigrants. And my immigrant ancestors came through Ellis Island, and they had a very stringent security check, and they had a very stringent disease check. I think some of the refugees that came out this week showed that they were sick with tuberculosis. And even the most hardcore anarchist has to say, that's a violation of my property rights for you to bring someone in with an infectious disease. So it's important for us to get serious. If we're going to have an immigration policy, we need to incentivize legal immigration. If it takes 15 to 25 years to get here, you are going to have people breaking the law for the opportunity. And if you're running from a third world refugee, I mean, no one ever ran away from free market capitalism, okay? These people are fleeing for a reason. They come for the opportunities that are here. Let's not blame the immigrants. Let's blame the government who gives them welfare, and let's blame the government for the heavy redundancy that they have, the Department of Homeland Security, which is multiple layers of bureaucracy. We need to streamline the system, make it simpler, easier path to naturalization, and let's be what the Statue of Liberty says. You know, we need to be that free market country like we were.
All right, so there's his stance on immigration, and I have to say, I've never really been a fan of the open border concept. So I got to say, this is the one thing, when I heard him say it, I'm like, that's probably the one thing I've heard you say that I'm just kind of like, meh. But I would still take that overall approach to let's build a wall and keep everybody in with machine guns.
But at the same time, like, I love what he's saying about the process so much. Living in Texas, dealing with illegal immigrants on a regular basis, having gone to school with illegal immigrants or kids of illegal immigrants and just adoring their parents and working with them and everything else. Exactly what he's saying is true, though. For the good ones, it's way too difficult and long and expensive and just crazy tedious process that most can't either deal with or afford. That being said, I'm still in favor of, like, get in line, do it legally. But the bureaucracy and the red tape is insane and has to go if we ever truly want to reform our immigration system. I do not think that we should just be allowing anyone that applies. But I think that the entire idea behind the, like, way too much involved, it should never take someone 15 years to get legal status here.
Well, no, and I agree. I think my only real stopping point was that he had talked about the fact that sometime outside of his lifetime he was hoping that we would have more of an open border system. I do agree with everything else that he said. I think it is time that we use the technology that we have to streamline our immigration process, because it's not like in this day and age that we can't find the information that we need about these people that are coming across the border.
Right.
It's not like we can't screen them to see what type of diseases they have. And honestly, if they have something dangerous and contagious like tuberculosis, it can either be treated to the point where it's no longer an issue before they're allowed into the population, or they can be returned back to wherever they came from and be like, I'm sorry, you're not coming over here because you're sick. So, I mean, I understand everything that he's saying. Again, my balking point was the rallying cry for almost every libertarian that I've ever heard, which is that we should have an open border system.
Yeah,
I'm not a fan of that. I'm
never going to be a fan of that. And by the way, show me a country that's done that where it's worked and they're still thriving.
You can't, because eventually what winds up happening is they all become like Europe is right now, and they're completely overrun.
My case in point, you can't. You can't. There are sovereign nations and borders for a reason. And a sovereign nation has every right to decide and discriminate. Yes, I use that word because it is. Discriminate on who will and will not be allowed in. And that doesn't, now we just use that in a racial tone, and that's not what or the sexual identity or whatever else. That's not what I mean. But I mean, we get to discern who it is that we want in or out of our country. I did like what he said about be mad at the government, not the illegals. I disagree on a point because they're still choosing to break the law, so you can hold them responsible for that part of it. But yes, I hold the government responsible for issuing them welfare, for allowing them the sanctuary cities that do not punish for this. And actually, I saw something about San Francisco that their city council or whatever their parallel to that is trying to tighten up their sanctuary city rules. And the sheriff has said that they're not going to abide by it. I don't know if it's a he or a she, but this person who is sheriff has said that they don't care. They won't abide by it, even if they do tighten them up. This is all, of course, like a result of Kate Steinle. But it is the government's fault for indulging. It's the government's fault for allowing it and indulging on many different levels, federal and state, that I have a huge issue with, and that I don't blame the immigrants for. I blame the government for.
No, and I completely agree. And actually, that was another thing that he said that I was completely glad to hear somebody say, is at this point, it's time we actually start getting mad at the right people, because there's a really easy way to fix a lot of this, even without the wall. Until we get it fixed, the businesses that are doing it could stop hiring illegal immigrants because they're willing to work for less money. And we could actually find ways to deal with all of this drug traffic that doesn't involve all of the crazy things that we do all day, every day. And it's honestly one of the reasons why I guess maybe as I get older, I am starting to lean a little more towards libertarianism, and more than I realized I was, until I actually started listening to a lot of the things that he was saying. But at this point, we have gone really, really long at this point. So why don't we start wrapping things up as we usually do? In case we've got new folks listening, why don't you tell them where it is they can interact with you should they choose to do so?
Facebook and Twitter. If you search J.R. Homestead, you can find me, HOLMSTED. And then also on a blog I'm with. It's a site, blog, whatever. With a lot of really smart people, misfitpolitics.weebly.com.
It's the same thing.
Same thing.
All right, and I am Rick Robinson. I'm here every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on America Off the Rails, right here on our home station on K98 Talk through the Spark Radio Network. Also on WNJC 1360 AM out of Philadelphia. Now moved to Friday drive time at 6 Eastern. And on SHR Media, 11 o'clock Eastern, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. AMFM247.com, 1 Eastern, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Anybody noticing Monday, Wednesday, Friday? And if you choose to interact with me, you can do so at the following places: www.facebook.com/RowdyVickyRobinson or AOTR_host on Twitter. If you want to interact with me, honestly, Twitter is one of the easiest ways to do it. Or you can shoot me an email. Shortest one is rick@k98talk.org. And on that note, folks, we have got to get out of here because we are now officially 5 minutes into the Loftus show time slot. So stay tuned for Michael Loftus.
Cause I've been through hell and I don't have time to go round and round and round. It's too late to turn back now. You know I wouldn't if I could. Cause I'm proud as hell, I can't bring myself to do what it is you think I should.
All writers are prone to becoming so attached to our characters and stories that we struggle to see why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing to full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, shaping stories into masterpieces that can stand the test of time. Editing services are provided for all genres and all age categories. Services range from critiques of the short story through to line edits of the full-length novel and copy editing for those preparing for publication. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your websites, as well as help with those book blurbs and promotional material. We won't abandon you to the masses. We want to celebrate with you in your successes. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services and prices, visit us at blackwolfeditorial.com.